Now, when we're stressed, if you look at this tablet here from Biohealth Diagnostics, it's not the best, but you can see the hormone pathways, and you can see up at the top pregnenolone. Well, pregnenolone is a precursor to progesterone, aldosterone, and cortisol, as well as DHEA, testosterone, and all your estrogens. The issue with this is when you're stressed, okay, you have to keep reducing cortisol. It helps fight inflammation, reduce blood pressure, help with blood sugar fluctuations. The problem with this is if you're constantly stressed, the body's going to take all the pregnenolone that's going towards DHEA to produce your estrogens and testosterone and use it to overproduce cortisol. This is called pregnenolone steal. At the same time, a lot of the pregnenolone that's going to produce progesterone actually gets deficient as well. So this is how a lot of women end up with a hormone imbalance, which is going to be a different slideshow in itself. But this is just to show you how you can end up with a hormone imbalance, lack of libido, fatigue, and end up in adrenal fatigue. Okay, typically in the stages of adrenal fatigue, 1, 2, 3, you basically start out with high levels, you keep going high, and then over time they start to putter out, which is stage 2, because you can't produce the necessary hormones. And in stage 3, you're pretty much at a loss. You really can't produce any more of the hormones, and you're pretty much in a sense, almost on empty, okay? So if you look at this, you can see the hormone pathways, but you can also see how you can end up with a hormone imbalance, a testosterone imbalance, an aldosterone, which regulates fluid retention in the body and blood pressure problems, as well as cortisol issues. So take a look at this study a little more, and hopefully you'll gather some information from it. Then here we can look at all the physiological effects of cortisol and DHEA in the body. It's not the best slide, it's about what I could get. Basically it affects neural health. It affects all the neural health on the body. It affects eicosanoid production, which is pro and anti-inflammatory state of the body. It affects detox capacity. It affects fat metabolism turnover. It affects the endocrine system, which has to do with pancreas, insulin, thyroid, and the ovaries. It affects over carbohydrate metabolism, how you break down sugars, and musculoskeletal health. It basically turns you in a catabolic state. So what does this mean? If you overproduce cortisol is not bad. But if you overproduce it, you have a chance of becoming catabolic, which is muscle wasting. You have a chance of having blood sugar fluctuations of high blood sugar or really low blood sugar. You have the tendency to go into a pro-inflammatory state, non-inflammatory, and have weak immune system. You have the tendency to go towards having issues with your detox pathways, and you have tendency to store fat around the midsection and have trouble with fat metabolism. So if any of these are affecting you, take a look at your cortisol levels and do your closest adrenal test. All right, this is Josh Rubin from East West Healing. That was a quick clip, very quick and rushed clip on the hormone pathways and how cortisol and adrenal fatigue can affect the body. Obviously, we can go into a lot more depth in this, just to give you a basic understanding. And my goal isn't to educate to give anyone type of diagnosis. At the same time, when I go over some effects of adrenal exhaustion stage 1, my goal isn't to give out any protocols right now, A, because I'm not working with you, and B, is I don't want to make any recommendations and then people go out there and start taking this stuff and have negative side effects. So I'm just going to give you an awareness so you can actually go out and do the testing, work with a practitioner such as myself to do nutritional lifestyle coaching with, to do an adrenal test with, or contact a local practitioner, contact Biohealth Diagnostics to work with an MD at their clinic, long distance, to get an adrenal test done. Okay, so my recommendation would be call me or call our clinic at 760-597-9727 to work with myself or Jeannie, or call Biohealth Diagnostics, go to the website at biohealthinfo.com to work with one of their practitioners. So we've talked about stress. What is stress in part 1? How does it affect the body? We just went over the pathways, how it affects the different parts of the body. Well, as chronic stress continues to hit the body and we don't do anything about it, the adrenal glands can no longer basically maintain high levels of cortisol. Okay? So typically stage 1, if you do an adrenal lab and you have any high levels or a high sum, that's stage 1. Okay? As your body keeps being put under stress, what happens is you go into stage 2. The daily cortisol output starts to fall below normal, and the DHEA levels decline even further. So you typically see on your adrenal gland, results, your adrenal test. Typically, what you see is a high or low cortisol levels, but the cortisol sum is actually normal, and the DHEA levels are low. Now, I'm not going to go into why and everything, but if you have a lab, you can look at it and get some ideas. And then if you keep going and the body keeps being stressed and you don't do anything about it, basically adrenal glands can't keep up anymore. DHEA levels drop, everything drops. And you start seeing low levels of cortisol, low levels of DHEA, and a low level of a cortisol sum. That's a very simplified sense, but it's just to give you some recommendations. What happens when this, when you go into adrenal exhaustion or any of those? Well, like I said, you typically see blood sugar fluctuations, immune system problems, detoxification problems, tissue health is compromised, and you have hormone imbalance. Okay. Well, what can you do about it? Well, the bottom line is we have all these people prescribing hormone supplements. That's great, but it's just Eastern medicine, but it's being used in a Western sense. All we're doing is giving healthier medications. My philosophy is to use nutritional lifestyle principles to actually get people towards homeostasis while using the adrenal hormones, okay, and other adaptogenic herbs such as, cordyceps, rhodiola, ashwagandha, peppermint tea, licorice root. Those are adaptogenics. They support the adrenals. They help prolong the half-life of cortisol. But there's other hormones that I'm not going to recommend just because I don't want to diagnose and give anyone some ideas of what they can go and use. But if you look at the chart, you can figure out what to use. So these are some of the things that you want to do to balance the adrenals, but the nutrition and lifestyle stuff is way more important. Now, what do we do for nutrition and lifestyle? Well, it's pretty simple. There's a lot to do, but we're going to break it down. The bottom line is if it wasn't here 10,000 years ago, don't eat it. If it's got a shelf life, don't eat it. Read the ingredients. If there's ingredients you cannot pronounce on it, don't eat it. If it's white, basically if it's flour, pasteurized milk, bleach, salt, and sugar, don't eat it. Okay? If it's in a can, if it's boxed, right? If it's wrapped in plastic, don't eat it. If it's stored in plastic, don't eat it. If it's not organic, don't eat it. Okay? Those are pretty simple. I know it sounds Nazi and people say, well, what do I eat? The bottom line is look for foods that are from Mother Earth. It takes life to give life. People are so friggin' confused, and it really stuns me. Why they're so tired and why there's so much disease and why this United States is so messed up with the housing crisis. Well, I got news for you. It's more than a housing crisis. It's a national debt. The U.S. is in debt over $5 trillion. That's beside the point. But if we look at it, people are feeding their bodies crap. They're living like crap. They're spending money beyond their means. They think like shit and they live like shit. Well, you get out of life what you put into it. So if you want life, you want energy. And when people are deficient of energy, most people with adrenal problems have low energy. They have tissue breakdown, low immune system function, blood sugar fluctuations, because they're eating all the foods I said not to eat, right? So you need foods that are living from Mother Earth. It takes life to give life. Any type of organic protein that you can think of. Any type of organic vegetable that you can think of, right? Any type of carbohydrate that's not processed or refined, like yams or brown rice, things like that. Most grains that you people eat, right, are processed and refined. Anything that most people go into any supermarket and then go into an organic market. Most of the stuff in like a Safeway and Albertsons or Shaw's, all those places, you walk in, it's just box and canned heaven. There's no fresh food, there's no life, no vitality, okay? So the bottom line is, do the nutritional lifestyle principles. There's a lot more to it. Follow your recommendations on what herbs to take and what hormones to take. And if you're in adrenal fatigue, and it takes longer than 6 to 12 months to fix, then you're doing something wrong. So if you want to learn more, give us a call, go to our website. Hopefully you'll learn something. I'm done talking, and I'm sick.